What's going on, Wolves? Welcome back to another episode of the Wake Up with the Wolf podcast. It is your host, Cole DaSilva, and today we're going to be talking about how you need to unlock your inner kid. You need to unlock your inner child. You need to allow yourself to do things that make the inner child, the inner kid, the inner you happy. Why? Because a lot of you guys are just way too obsessed about being a grown up nowadays. And I understand because we are obviously grown ups. We are grown ups. So we need to do grown up shit. We need to focus on doing grown up things, or we won't have food. We won't have a house. We won't have a car. But you shouldn't lose the kid in the process. You shouldn't lose you in the process. You see, over the last 8 years, I've done a lot of pretty amazing things, and I've transformed my life in a very big way. All right, again, I've went from an iron-working drug addict, struggling on a continual basis, to a multi-seven-figure CEO of two companies, being able to do virtually whatever I want with my life, being able to retire my wife, give my son a beautiful life, employ a bunch of amazing, beautiful people. I've done a lot, and I've transformed my life mentally, physically, emotionally, and financially. However, I'm also going to be frank with you guys. There's been days, weeks, months, years in the last 8 years where I did nothing but work. All right. I put my nose to the grindstone. I blocked out everything and everyone, and I grinded my fucking face off. Now, would I change anything I did in the last 8 years? Absolutely not, because we've seen immense success. I'm extremely grateful, blessed to be in the position I am today. Now, does that change the fact that I might have altered, okay, pivoted here and there? No. And the reason why I bring all this up to you is because I now realize 8 years later, in this completely new life that I am living, in this beautiful life that I am living, that I wouldn't have been able to rush the timeline in the first place. So I should have stopped trying a long fucking time ago. And I should have allowed myself to be more of a kid. Right. I allowed my inner kid to come out more. So I want you guys to just think about this for a minute. How many hobbies have you stopped doing due to the opinions of others in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years? How many hobbies have you stopped doing due to the fact that you feel like you couldn't achieve your goals if you were doing said hobby? Think about that shit and answer it to yourself. And then go look in the mirror and ask yourself, do I actually love that thing? And if the answer is yes, why don't you go do it? Why don't you go allow yourself to explore it again? I'm sharing all of this with you due to an experience that I dealt with yesterday. And I want to walk you guys through it and tell you it right now because, again, I've seen a lot of success. Right. On top of everything I mentioned before, I was able to buy myself and my wife our dream home. We currently live in a massive 5,000 square foot house on the top of the mountain in West Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. And I fucking love it. It's beautiful. The natural light is amazing. It's got a triple car garage here, beautiful backyard, beautiful pool. I love the entire home. It's exactly what we needed and what we wanted. On top of that, I got our dream cars. I bought Julia Q7. I've got an AMG G63 and I got my R8. But there's been something I've wanted since I was a little kid. All right, there's been something I've debated on getting since I was a little kid. And you see, it came from movie and movie and movie. All right, one of my favorite movies of all time, or shows, actually. Sorry, I have a tendency of calling shows movies and movies shows. I have no idea why. Hashtag dyslexia or hashtag I don't know what the fuck is wrong with me. When it comes down to this shit, Sons of Anarchy is one of my favorite shows of all time. And I think the spark of why it's one of my favorite shows of all time when it comes down to the camaraderie, the brotherhood, and the motorcycles is because of my father. You see, I want to open up a little bit to you guys right now. I've shared a lot about my dark past with you. I've shared a lot about my negative experiences with my family with you. I'm just going to be fucking blunt. There's been time after time where I've explained the negative memories that I have from my childhood with you guys. When it comes down to abuse of my family, anger in my family, leaving my house at 14 and choosing to couch surf because I didn't want to come home due to the fights that I would have with my family. But that doesn't mean there wasn't positives in my life growing up. All right. I would be a hypocrite and just a straight out liar if I told you that it was all negative and there was never any positive. And when it comes down to it, there is one memory that will be etched in my brain for the rest of my life. And that was we were taking a road trip. I don't remember where due to the fact that I was so young, but we were taking a road trip. Me and my brothers and my mom were all in the van. And I was literally looking at my dad driving his big ass Honda Shadow motorcycle beside us while we were on the road trip. that memory will be etched in my brain for the rest of my fucking life. And since then, and then growing up and watching all these movies and growing up and watching all these shows and growing up and seeing all these friends get motorcycles, I have always wanted one. Now, why didn't I allow myself to get one? Well, first and foremost, when I wasn't an entrepreneur, I spent all my money on drugs and alcohol and being a fucking loser. So I didn't have money to get one in the first place. And my focus was on drugs and alcohol and being a man whore, not doing the things that I wanted to do with my life. And then after becoming an entrepreneur, my focus has been so heavily on grind for the last 8 years that even though I did get toys like the G-Wagon and the R8, and even though we did travel like crazy, a lot of it is like not celebrated in our household. It doesn't mean I don't appreciate it, but I don't celebrate a lot of it. All right, Daniel, say hi. Hello. As you guys know, Daniel is consistently helping us with all content creation platforms on a daily basis. The reason why I just wanted him to say hi is because you guys know that he's in the room right now, number one. And number two, he actually sees it. Guys, I will have a win happen and I'll celebrate it for a split second and then move on to the next fucking thing. All right, that'll be it for me. But this one was different. You see, as of recently, it just sparked in my brain. You know what? I'm going to go get a motorcycle and I'm going to fulfill that childhood dream. I'm going to go get a motorcycle. So when I do see my dad again, because we've been talking a shitload, we're actually all going to be going to Portugal as a family here soon. And I'm going to talk about that in another podcast. I want to be able to ride with him. I want to be able to connect with him. I want to be able to fucking rip Harleys and our motorcycles down the fucking highway together, because there's a part of me that would love to do that based off of the memory I have when I was a kid, when he was riding beside the vehicle. So I went Harley shopping, Harley hunting, motorcycle hunting. And when I tell you that it was an uphill battle, I'm not joking. What do I mean by that? Well, I walked into 3 different dealerships with $20,000 cash in my hand and got denied 3 times. Not because I was offering them $20,000 less than what they were asking either. I've never dealt with salespeople that don't want to make cash so much in my life. One dealership was actually ridiculous. This is a side story. I drove all the way down to Chilliwack, which is a 3-hour drive away from Kelowna. Okay. They didn't think to text me, warn me, nothing. So I drove 3 hours to Chilliwack. I walked into the dealership. I shook homie's hand. I said hello. I introduced myself. I asked where the bike is. He said it was at service. So we drove down to service. He goes in the back, comes back to me and says, "Oh, the bike is taken apart." I was like, "Excuse me?" And they had ripped off the front tire, ripped out the battery, tore it apart, and it was currently getting serviced. So I was like, "You just made me drive 3 hours to not even be able to sit on the bike, turn the bike on, or anything." Okay, whatever. We then go to talk about price, just to find out that they didn't even have any room to move in the price in the first place after they lied to me on the phone. And then when I tried to salvage the trip and talk about another motorcycle, which was actually a 2019 Indian that was outfitted like a road glide, it looked amazing. I asked them about information on that vehicle, and they're like, "Oh, we don't even know, actually. We have no idea what it's going to sell for. We have no idea what's wrong with it. It hasn't been a service." So I'm like, "Why is it out here on the floor then?" They're like, "I don't know. Where else are we going to put it?" It was wild, mind boggling. They let an individual drive into their parking lot with a $400,000 G-Wagon and $20,000 cash and not buy a vehicle. They just let me leave. It's wild to me. It's wild to me how some individuals act, because they don't understand the game of sales and the game of persuasion and more. But that's besides the point, just a side story. Because trying to buy a bike, trying to buy a Harley was an uphill battle. But we ended up getting one. Now, I'm actually going to play you guys the audio of this on the podcast. Now, if you're listening on the audio only platform, you're going to have to go over to YouTube or go over to Instagram and TikTok and subscribe/follow to my channels, because I need you to see this video, because I am not joking. I don't really dream, guys. Okay, I don't really dream. But for some reason, as of recently, I've been waking up with music playing in my head. And ever since Daniel, shout out to fucking Daniel, everybody. Daniel, say hi again. Made this video yesterday when the Harley showed up at my fucking house, I have had this song stuck in my head the entire time. Let's listen to the video right quick, because it is my favorite thing ever. Thank you, G. I'm gonna rip the fucking shit out of this engine in a second. I'm gonna rev the fuck out of it. This is fucking cool. And then in that video, honestly, that shit's so cool. I'm gonna go rev the motorcycle right after this. If we could take the entire podcast set up to the garage so I could just bop, we probably would do that right now. But in the rest of that video, I go on to talk about the inner child. And that is the entire point of this podcast because, guys, sitting on that motorcycle unlocks something that's different. It feels different than sitting in the G Wagon. It feels different than sitting on the R8. It feels different than all the other things that I did. And the reason why I feel that is because it's connected to a memory that I have in the past. You see, I knew I always wanted money. I knew I always wanted the cars. I knew I always wanted the G Wagon and the R8. But the G Wagon, the R8, the house, the money was never connected to a deep memory, if that makes sense. All right. This memory resurfaced when I started to think about a motorcycle. And now that I have fulfilled the memory, it's got like a special bond to me already. I haven't even drove the thing around the neighborhood yet. I'm in love with it. I've went and sat on it, no word of a lie, 5 times today and just turned it on. I am so fucking giddy, it's not even funny. And it brings out an inner child in me. When I sit on it, I remember that memory. When I sit on it, it brings out something in me that hasn't been unlocked in a very long time. Something about motorcycles, about machines that are not cars, get me amped up. I grew up with quads. I grew up with dirt bikes. I grew up with snowmobiles. I grew up with things that you could ride around in the country and go off on. It's not like they were super expensive. Fuck, one of my snowmobiles that we had in the past, we actually traded a shitty tin boat for that I had to consistently fix the head gasket on. So when we drove the snowmobile around, I would have 6, 7 head gaskets in the back seat. So when it blew up, I could take it apart and fix the engine while we kept driving. This shit brings out the inner child in me. So after Harley dealership, Harley dealership, I ended up going to get a 2018 Road King with only 4,000 kilometers. It's already got a stage 2 on the engine, big ass ape hangers, redone across the board, and 3M'd, and it is fucking beautiful. I am so happy. It's not even funny. My most exciting part about all of this is that as soon as I sent that photo and video to my dad right away, he's like, I got to get the old girl started. So when we go ride, I don't disappoint. And that's very cool to me because, again, there are a lot of memories that I have in my family that are not good. All right. It took a very long time for me to forgive and forget. It took a very long time for me to embrace one of my core principles, which is love deeply, forgive freely. However, I finally reached a point in my life where I am doing that in a lot of other areas, in a lot of areas in general. And this motorcycle brings out the fucking kid in me in a very big way. All right, in a very big way. And the main reason why I'm explaining this to you guys, telling you this story, connecting with you, opening up with you, is because I want you to find something that unlocks the kid in you. Because we spend a whole lot of fucking time trying to be grown-ups. All right, paying this bill and taxes and bullshit and stress and problems and overwhelm and children and friends' problems and society's problems and the news's problems and the government's problems. And we rarely spend time on us. What do we want? What makes us happy? What makes us giddy? What makes us smile? What makes us excited? Go do something that unlocks your inner child. What have you not done for the last 2 decades, 1 decade, 5 years, 2 years, 3 years, 8 years? That you know you love, but you haven't did it because you are so focused on grown-up shit. When we are kids, we are so focused on becoming grown-ups just to find out that it's pretty shitty. You got to pay bills. You got to pay taxes. You got to deal with shit every day. And then we let the inner child in us die because we need to be grown-ups. But why not just spend a little bit of time unlocking that inner child in you so you can live your absolute best life possible? Why not spend a little bit of time figuring out what lights that soul on fire and then feeding the fire with a couple more logs? Find something that unlocks the inner kid in you so you can express, level up, love life, feel better, enjoy life. Now, I know there's going to be some people who listen to this that are like, yeah, it's very easy for you to say, Cole. None of us have the money to buy a G Wagon and an R8 and a motorcycle and a house and all these other things. Yeah, you probably don't. Let's just call a spade a spade. A lot of you guys listening to this podcast, this YouTube video, this TikTok, this Instagram, a lot of you guys probably don't have the fucking money like I do to go buy an R8, a G-Wagon, a motorcycle, a house to fulfill your childhood dreams and unlock that inner child in you. But what you could do is something else. If you don't have the money to fulfill the dream yet, go make the dream happen. Like I just said, I ate shit and grinded my face off for 8 years. Didn't reward myself at all until around 6.5 years, 5.5 years into the journey itself. Then we started to get some things. Now, even though it's grind mode, it's also play mode because I've understand how to balance both. Why? Because I'm a master of my time. I grind my fucking face into the dirt. I wake up at 3 a.m., blah, blah, blah. I'm not even going to dive into that shit. Stay tuned on the YouTube. You guys are going to see a bunch of value videos about it. Entire point of today is unlock your inner child. Do something today, tomorrow, this week, next month that has been speaking to your soul. Maybe it's playing video games. Maybe it's going to a movie by yourself and eating some popcorn and enjoying the ambiance of the movie theater. Maybe it's getting a snowmobile and ripping it around. Maybe it's getting a motorcycle. Maybe it is getting a nice car. You guys can get a motorcycle, a Harley Davidson right now off of Kijiji for $1,000. That wasn't good enough for me because I go big or I go home. But you guys could. What lights your soul on fire? What would you have to do today to let the inner you back out into the light? Let your inner kid come out. Let your inner kid shine. And stop taking life so fucking seriously. Subscribe to the channel. Follow on all platforms. And again, if you got value, comment below. Because I look at your comments and I look at what you're saying in order to create the next piece of content. So what would you like me to speak about next? That's it for me. Peace.